Okay, this is Bashan with scooterdoc.proboards.com, and we've had a request to take a CF250 carburetor apart and clean it and rebuild it. I'm not going to rebuild this one. We're just going to clean it. If you wanted to rebuild it, which usually isn't necessary, you would just use the rebuild kit when you put it back together and use all the parts. So let's get this thing apart tonight, and then tomorrow we will clean it and put it back together. So first you want to get the auto choke off. Just take this little boot off here. And then there's one retaining screw that holds this particular choke on. I'm going to be doing this left-handed so the camera can see a little better. I'm kind of clumsy left-handed, so you just have to bear with me. Let's get this out of here. And choke should pull right out of there. And there's still a couple threads. As I said, I'm pretty clumsy left-handed. There we go. Alright, here's our auto choke. Got the plunger. If you wanted to test this, you could hook a 12-volt source up to the yellow wire here, and then the other side of the battery, put it on the green ground wire, and this plunger should come out 3/16 of an inch in about 5 to 10 minutes. You can use any 12-volt source. It doesn't have to be AC. It can be DC. You can even use a car battery. Set this aside. Now let's get our vacuum slide dome off. Just 2 screws here. Okay. There's a spring under here, so you might want to hold that down with your thumb. You want to take it apart kind of carefully. Just take the dome off. Here's your spring. Set the dome aside. Set the spring aside. Pull the slide out of there. This is your needle that goes down into the main jet. The Venturi effect lifts this up and pulls that out of the main jet and allows more gas into the carburetor. You can get the needle out of there with this nylon bolt down in the bottom of the slide. We'll do that tomorrow. And you can inspect the diaphragm, make sure it's not brittle, make sure there's no tears or cracks in it. And we'll look into that more tomorrow. Okay. Let's get the ACV valve off. This is your air cut valve right here on the CF250. Air comes in through this little opening on the bottom, enters the carburetor body through this hose here. There's also another channel in here. This nipple goes to the vacuum source, the intake manifold, and when you shut down your throttle from wide open throttle or a little bit less, this creates a vacuum in here, and it closes off the ACV valve and shuts off the air going into the carburetor, and it richens the mixture, which keeps you from backfiring on deceleration. If you shut down your throttle and you backfire, there's a chance it could be a bad diaphragm inside the ACV valve here, and we'll open this up and take a look and show you what that looks like. There's quite a strong spring in here, so you're going to want to hold that down with your thumb. Here's our spring. Here's the little diaphragm, and this plunger pushes down on the ACV valve, which is actually down there. And You want to inspect the diaphragm. Make sure there's no cracks or holes in it, just like your vacuum slide diaphragm. Set that aside. Okay, what's next? Alright. Take the float ball off. Got 4 screws here. Just bear with me, take me a minute to get this off left-handed. And one more. Oops. Okay. Now, take the float ball off. There's a little gasket on here. It's best to keep it down in this groove if you can. Once that thing gets out of there, it's kind of difficult to get it back in there. You can see this one's a little dirty. We're going to need to clean that up with some carburetor cleaner. Now, here's our main jet, and then in here is the idle jet. This right here is the auto choke feed. So this really doesn't come out when your auto choke is on. It pulls gas out of the bowl through here, and then once that shuts off, this becomes inert and does nothing. So first, let's get the main jet. Excuse me, the main jet out of there. You want to get a nice wide screwdriver in there and pretty much fill up the slot. You don't want to take a chance of this is pretty soft brass. You don't want to take a chance of marring it. So here comes the main jet. And the main jet, I can't read it. Looks like maybe 110. We'll look at that closer tomorrow. And then we want to get the jet tube out of there. Can use a crescent wrench on this. There you go. The vice grips work okay too. And you notice these little aerator holes in the tube. Those will need to be checked and cleaned. We want to get the low speed jet out of there. Again, use as wide of a screwdriver and thick as you can that'll fit in the slot so you don't injure it. There we go. Here she comes. Okay. Alright. There we go. And same with the low speed. You can see the little aeration holes. We'll need to check them and clean them out tomorrow. Now, need to get the float off. There's a little shaft that runs through here, and it just simply is a pressure fit. You need to tap it out and don't get too frisky with it because you can screw things up big time. What I use is a nail punch, and smallest one you have, and you just put it in the small end of the shaft, the retaining shaft, pin, not shaft, pin, and just tap it a few times. And it should come right out. Sometimes they don't. There. Now you lift your float off. And here is your float plunger right here. This fits in to your this recess that's the float valve. And as your float bowl fills up, your float comes up and it pushes this plunger up into the recess here, into the valve. And when it gets full enough, it shuts off the gas. So if you have gas coming out of this hose right here, your carburetor vent hose, there's a good possibility it's this little plunger is not sealing up in that valve. So you'll need to take your plunger off here and inspect it and make sure there's no crud on the seal, and make sure the spring is working well. There's a little spring on the end here, it's rather delicate. And just make sure this is clean and everything's functioning properly. Okay. And we've got our AF screw here. Now, if you're used to working on GY6s, the AF screw is on the side. This is the CF250. The AF screw is on the bottom, which makes it real convenient to get to. Pull that out of there. And we'll check that out tomorrow. Make sure everything's cleaned up real nice. This usually isn't dirty, but you're going to want to spray some carb cleaner all through these orifices and passageways. So you'll need to get these plugs out of here. This one doesn't come out of there, but you'll need to get all of these out of here so that we can clean all those passages out. Now, one last thing. This component right here is for the coolant hookup. Honda designed a coolant flow. There's passages all through these bodies of these carburetors for coolant, and I guess the theory was they wanted the carburetor to be warmed up and it would work better that way. I'm not sure. Maybe it was from working in cold environments, but in any event, generally people nowadays don't even hook these up. So if you're worried about hooking up coolant to these nipples here, don't even worry about it. It doesn't matter. But let's pull this off. I've never had this off, so I'm really not sure what this looks like under there. So let's pull it off and just see what the heck's going on. Right, here it comes. Alright. Okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it? This is blanked out. There's no opening there at all. So these coolant nipples go nowhere. They're blanked out. So it would do absolutely no good on this particular carburetor to hook the coolant lines up to these nipples. So I would suggest on your carburetor, if you're wondering about that, just pull this component off. It's got one screw, and see if it's blanked off or not. If it is, it would be absolutely fruitless to hook coolant lines up to it. So that would be a complete waste of time. Other than that, I think we got most of the stuff off there. Yeah, we do. So tomorrow we will clean those components up and then reassemble it, and that should finish this little project out.